Awesome. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. Always pleased to be back at LeadDev and back at LeadDev in Berlin in particular. I want to start with a throwback. Does anyone here like Daft Punk? Some hands. Excellent. Thank you. Does anyone remember this song? I feel very old. Good. Some people remember it. Thank you. The song is called Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. It has this video to the song where these robots are in a factory and they are transforming aliens into humans. So these like very blue, kind of odd-looking, but still bipedal aliens becoming humans. The robots are changing their bodies, kind of painting on skin, painting clothes onto them, taking their memories and kind of recasting them as human memories and then like reloading them into their brains. And the song is what the robots in the factory are singing while they are humanizing the aliens. And I realized this song actually speaks to me quite a lot. I think as engineering leaders, we face something of a trap here, particularly if we've come from a software background. There is a danger that we try and treat humans like machines and tell them to work harder, better, faster, stronger, hour after hour. And I don't want to treat my team that way. Instead, I want to treat them as humanly as possible, honestly. But we still need to build things better, faster, stronger. And the question is, how do we do that? This talk is about learning, so of course I'm going to rewrite the lyrics to be learning relevant. And it's about how we can use learning to make teams that are better, faster, stronger, and smarter without treating them like machines, if we do it right. So my name is Hywel, as Pat said. I've been an engineering leader and a CTO since about 2011. I'm also very passionate about learning. So all of my work interests and everything I do outside of work, I think all of my hobbies really boil down to learning. It's the thing that excites me most, rather than the thing itself very often. I love learning new programming languages. I love learning to be better at the ones that I already know a bit. I love learning how to be a better leader. In fact, I started a dinner club for CTOs in this room at a pub in London in order to become a better engineering leader myself. And I started this podcast, primarily context-based, really for my own benefit to become a better leader and learning from other people about the contextual decisions that we have to make as engineering leaders. I've had a long-term project of building an 8-bit computer that's capable of playing Pong, because I wanted to learn more about how microarchitecture works. I love learning stuff about the world, which is useful for quizzes. So this is a British TV show called University Challenge. I've been in a few different kind of quiz programs in my time. I play the saxophone. I like playing the saxophone. I don't really like practicing, but like learning new stuff I find super enjoyable. I learned to knit a few years ago, not really with the aim of making this jumper, but having knitted a jumper, I probably will never knit anything again. It took a very long time, and I've since got fatter and no longer fit the jumper. So it's not a great advert for knitting, but it is a great advert for learning. Learning has also been the focus of my work for the last 5 years, and I'm going to start with a hot take about learning, so I hope you're all ready for some spicy red pill action. Companies are really bad at learning. Like, we suck at this. Developers want learning an awful lot. If you look at what developers want from their work, the number one thing that they ask for is work-life balance, quite understandably, I think. The number two thing they ask for is progression and growth. Number three is where compensation comes. People want learning and growth more than they want a pay rise. So what do? We give them access to learning that people end up not using or engaging with. We give them the opportunity to learn, but we put the onus on them to actually make use of it, which means we end up competing with Netflix and Disney Plus and YouTube and all the other kind of content that they have access to in their spare time. Another statistic for you, more than 90% of people report that they really want personalized learning. So what do? We give them courses. We give them this undifferentiated assembly line of steps that they're going to pass through, the same as everyone else. See, we talk about investing in people and shipping faster, making teams more capable, but then we give them generic learning. We see no impact, and we hire to solve those problems. We hire new people into our organizations to solve the problems we had instead. I think most people only ever see benefit from organic and informal learning. And so people think formal learning isn't possible in our industry. It is. We've just been very bad at doing it. Now, I know this is a very stressful time for everyone. There is a lot going on for folks in this world. Whole load of layoffs this year. AI as a sort of new entrant that threatens to change significantly how our industry works, whether we're going to incorporate it into our products, whether our teams are going to use it, and of course, what's next. I think the last year of ChatGPT and GPT generally has been very impressive in its progress. What's going to happen in the next 6 or 12 months, and how is that going to affect our world? Certainly most of us are doing more with less. I want to convince you that learning is a key part of strategy now more than ever. Learning that gets your team shipping better code faster, which is around 66% more cost-effective than hiring for improving productivity. And that's learning that achieves goals, improves your metrics, hits your OKRs, and means that your organization can succeed. But first, I'm going to talk about this guy. Now, I mentioned Daft Punk earlier. I'm old now, so I have less time to go out and listen to music of my generation. That's why I'm referencing a song that was released in 2001. Nowadays, I have 2 children, and so rather than dance music, my evenings are spent reading children's books. And my kids like this series called Mr. Men. I guess some people have come across the Mr. Men books. I don't know if this only exists in the UK. But one of the Mr. Men is this guy. This is Mr. Topsy-Turvy. And Mr. Topsy-Turvy does everything upside down, right? He does it upside down and backwards. The door to his house is installed upside down. The windows are upside down, which you wouldn't think was possible with Windows. The chimney is upside down. I assume the smoke goes into his upper floor. The curtains are upside down. He is so upside down that he disobeys the laws of gravity and physics. I was reading this story to my children and thinking about learning, and I was thinking, well, how would we do learning in a topsy-turvy way? How would Mr. Topsy-Turvy make learning incredibly wrong? And I realized we actually already do quite a lot of those things. So here's my second spicy hot take, which I think might be spicier than the first one, so I hope you're ready for some chili. Everyone loves learning. Everyone loves to learn. Everyone hates training. I mean, they hate it. You talk to people about training, and they kind of curl up, and you can see them get defensive and try and find a way to the door. So I'd originally planned this talk about making learning strategic and effective, but then I thought, with this in mind, I should talk about how we got here. And so instead, I decided to do the Mr. Topsy-Turvy version of the talk. How can we ensure that learning is rubbish? How can we make learning incredibly ineffective? So I'm going to talk about 6 failure modes for learning, how we can make sure that our learning achieves very little and has no impact, some of which may look familiar. And then right at the end, the switcheroo, I'll talk about how to do the opposite. So I hope I don't run out of time, otherwise I'll never actually get to the positive message. Cool. So failure mode number 1, let's leave it to the individual. Yes, as a tech leader, your strategic goals are about the team, the organization, and the company. If you want learning to fail, just leave it to the individual. If you target learning to individuals, you'll never see mass impact at those kind of higher levels of the organization. There are a number of ways to achieve this. Maybe you can give people no direction at all and let them learn whatever they're interested in. There's a good place for that, but it's not going to give you that overall impact. Or maybe you can incentivize them indirectly. You can tell them what's needed for promotion and give them the opportunity to learn that. Again, there is a great place for that, but you're not going to see that kind of overall mass impact. If you ask people to learn individually, you're going to get individual level results. You're leaving the mass outcomes to chance. If and only if individuals choose to learn the same thing, and they all do it, and they do it effectively, then you will see an overall impact. But it's very unlikely to happen because individuals struggle to make time. If you leave learning to be an individual activity, then their good intentions aren't going to make more time in the day for it. They're always going to prioritize their responsibilities to the team, the other work that they have to do, which means the learning probably doesn't happen. And if it does, it might have some impact for the individual, but not for the team or the organization as a whole. All right, failure mode number 2, hire instead. The motivation to learn should be from improving team and organizational outcomes, right? You can avoid learning if you just hire to solve those problems instead. Then there's no need to learn. And if there's no need to learn, there's no incentive to learn. Learning is often kind of hard to start with, right? You have to work out your entry point. You have to work out what needs to be learned and what resources and where it's going to be scheduled into your day. If you just fill those skill gaps through hiring, then you take away the need and you take away the motivation, and therefore the energy that's required to overcome that initial hard work will just dissipate and learning will never happen. So you can just hire people in that new stack or hire more experienced, better developers, and then you can obviate the learning. I really love the word obviate, by the way. It's a very weird word, but it means to make something unnecessary or pointless. You can make learning unnecessary and pointless by hiring instead, which is kind of our default, I think. All right, failure mode number 3, courses. Super easy. Everyone loves a good course. Courses are the factory model. They are a good way of minimizing impact. Because in a factory, what you do is you take a unit of work and you put it through each processing step in turn so that you get a kind of uniform product at the end of that process. They avoid personalization. They avoid that kind of individualization and detailed targeting that people want. So if you think, what is it like to learn things that are irrelevant or stuff that you already know? I think it's boring. And I think, to me, boredom is the binary opposite of learning. This is a super easy way to make learning fail. You just put everyone on the same conveyor belt. I'm going to use this as a prop, so I hope everyone can see. Imagine this like nearly closed D here. Just imagine there's like a color in there to close it off. Imagine this is what you already know about a topic. A good course will typically start with the kind of progression that starts with things that you already know and then takes you kind of outside the circle to stuff that is new to you. So the stuff that you already know, that's not going to be a great use of your time, right? Because those are things that you already know. Actually, the way we want learning to happen is by always just sort of pushing out the edge. The ideal learning takes what you already know and just builds on that and accretes gradually, building out in layers. Whereas if you're introduced to ideas out here while you're learning, you don't even know the ideas that those are building on. So a course typically will have some content that is not that useful to you because you already know, some content that is kind of pushing you and is right at the barrier that you need to learn, and a load of stuff that's far outside the circle and is therefore not that useful to you, which is a way of making people disengage and learning little from quite a large time investment. All right, let's fail mode 4, passivity. Yes, passivity, reading, watching videos, or listening to someone, probably a man, probably white, probably about 6'5" on a stage, going on and on and on. I do appreciate the irony in criticizing passive learning, but there are benefits to passive learning as well. So when we want individuals to learn a skill, we would typically pair them with a mentor. Great way to learn a skill because you can benefit from that doing and from that feedback from another person. When we think about a group, we tend to turn to content because it scales, which is a fantastic way to avoid learning skills. That passive learning, that content consumption, is fantastic for information. It's fantastic for inspiration. It doesn't give you skills. To learn a skill, you need to do the thing. You need to actually be solving a problem, or if you're going to learn to ride a bike, you need to be riding a bike, and ideally getting some feedback in that process. But with content, if you're trying to give people a skill and they're trying to put it into practice, they'll get stuck. They'll have questions. And those things are a learning opportunity. That's when the learning can really happen. But if they are just consuming content, they don't get to ask those questions. They don't get to have those misunderstandings addressed. And instead, they just move on. The questions they had get forgotten, and the opportunity for learning is lost. All right. Learning failure mode number 5, relying on seniors. Yes, get your seniors to teach. Enormously skilled people who've focused on learning their craft and becoming brilliant at it. Rather than teaching others per se, they have focused their skills in like a domain and getting very technically competent at it. Teaching is a separate skill. Teaching involves communication. You don't learn, but you don't make someone learn by putting someone very clever next to someone who doesn't know the stuff that they know and just waiting for the information to kind of diffuse across the gap. It's a terrible use of people's time. It takes them away from their core work to do something they're probably quite bad at. If they're not teachers, the person that they are mentoring won't learn much either. So this is a way of making sure learning is kind of close to zero and reducing your productivity, because you're taking one of the most experienced, productive people at something away from something they are good at and having them do something that they are likely to be ineffective at. To learn, you really do need a fantastic teacher. And I'm sure there are some expert software developers, expert people who are also great teachers, but they are not the same skill, and many expert developers will not be fantastic teachers. So if you find experts who aren't teachers, then you can ensure that no one learns and hit productivity at the same time. It is a double whammy. All right, approach number 6. Here's another way to fail at learning, the fire hose. Learning really needs focus and concentration. If you want to avoid learning, one way to achieve that is to just deluge people with as much information as possible, blast learning at them, give them more to learn than they can handle, go deep for hours and hours at a time with no breaks. There's then no opportunity for them to deeply understand and cement anything before they move on. And this gets supercharged with courses. If you're taking that course approach, you need to be aware of two things: the primacy effect and the recency effect. The primacy effect says that we remember and learn the first things that we heard well. The recency effect says that we also learn, I've done this the wrong way around because you're looking at me. The primacy effect is over here. Okay, the recency effect is over here because, left or right. So the recency effect says that we learn and recall the last thing that we learned especially well. Now, if you arrange learning as a course, that means the stuff in here that was first in the course, the stuff that you already knew, that's one of the things you're going to remember really well and have good recall for. The stuff out here that was at the end of the course, that was quite far beyond what you really needed to learn and far beyond your existing abilities, that stuff you're going to remember really well too. All the stuff in the middle that was kind of at the edge of your capabilities and was really going to push out the circle of what you already know is actually the stuff that you'll remember least well. The bits that you'll remember are the opposite of the bits that you want to be learning. So, luckily, I do have time for this bit, thank goodness. What should you do differently when you're back at your desk? How can you learn strategically? How can you weaponize learning to be part of your strategies? The answer for that, I'm going to use this acronym of SCALE for. So the S is for solving problems. We learn skills by doing. So you need to build learning that involves doing, hands-on, solving problems, whether that's coding problems, whether that's having conversations to kind of practice those awkward interpersonal skills that you want to help people improve at. The answer is the same. You need to do to learn a skill. Learning should be continuous, not a fire hose that blasts information at people, but it should be stretched out over time. You still want it to be regular. You want learning to keep happening, but you don't want it to be frequent. You don't want it to be too big blocks, too much at once, because people need a chance to internalize what they've learned and really understand it and get to grips with it before they learn the next thing. A is for assess needs. Work out what each individual doesn't know, as granular as you can, and work out what they don't know as well. That's often where the most interesting learning happens. And then target to the needs that they have. L is for limit scope. Only work on the overlap between what this person doesn't know and what they need to know for their work. The things that you learn that are not relevant were probably not worth learning if they're not going to have an immediate impact, because you won't have a chance to cement those ideas before you learn the next thing. The only way to achieve that is to get very granular, to learn in a bite-sized way and learn piece by piece the things that you need to know. And then lastly, engage with humans. This is what's called interactive learning. It gets the best learning results when you are learning by doing, but also interacting with other humans at the same time. Ideally with an awesome teacher, someone who can answer your questions, who can explain things, who can help you make all those mental connections that are going to mean that learning really sticks and has an impact. I actually think that learning is never over, and I suspect the fact that everyone here would agree with me, given that you are probably here mainly to learn. Learning should be continuous. And I think once you find learning that actually works, that becomes easy because you won't want it to stop. Learning feels like gaining superpowers. Learning is a way to supercharge what you do, what your team is doing, that I think becomes kind of addictive, actually. I think that might sound really hard, for what it's worth. I think this is not an easy approach. I think it is hard. I think it's a lot of work to do learning that is genuinely effective and makes a difference. It's hard to do this assessment and work out exactly what each individual does and doesn't know and what their needs are. It's hard to create problem-based learning because as well as all of the content and information you give people, you also need to create the problems for them to solve and to practice on. It's hard to have humans lead it because humans don't scale in the way that content does. But I also think it's hard being an engineering leader. It's hard to hire effectively. It's hard to lead and manage people. You can do hard things. This is just another one. The difference is that this approach to learning is probably new to you. You're already doing a bunch of hard work. This sounds like more hard work, but you can do this too. Now, I said before that I recognize this is a hard time for people in technology. I think that there's change and challenge coming from all directions. I see two ways that we at Skillerwell can support events like LeadDev. Firstly, we sponsor events like this because we believe in them. I think LeadDev is fantastic. I think it's a fantastic source of network with all of you, a fantastic source of incredible speakers. The speakers I've seen over the last few days I think have been fantastic. I haven't seen as many as I'd like, but I know they're going to be online afterwards, and I will be catching up on the ones that I don't get to see. Secondly, I think the second way we can support people is through the approach I described, which we call live team coaching. It's a way of doing more with less. I appreciate that it's hard and you can outsource it to us. We sponsor the conference because we think that a bunch of people in this audience would benefit from being our customers. But we would also love to help you implement it without us because we believe in these ideas very strongly and we think you will find them beneficial to your teams. Either way, whether you want to take these ideas and run with them yourself or whether you just want to talk about learning in general, please do come and chat. We have a stand out there. It's kind of out the doors and like just on the right. I hope to see a bunch of you and talk more. And thank you for listening.